He's the man. He's the myth. He's the scientist with all the questions and all the answers. It's Alex's Science Corner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi,
Bobby.
I don't have his applause. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
So you want to tell us about these worms?
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you about the worms. First story I'm talking about is, the main story I'm talking about today is biologists have found there's worms in a very toxic lake in California. That the lake is super salty and has very, very high levels of arsenic in it. And prior to the biologists going there and spending a lot of time, they thought there were like only two creatures that lived there. There's a type of brine shrimp that lived there and a diving fly. Well, they found 8 more species, all of them different types of worms called nematodes. And these nematodes are able to survive in this really harsh environment. And one of the things that's interesting is that when the biologists took it out of that lake, they were able to study them under normal conditions and the worms were still alive. Most of the time, if you have a creature that lives in one of these extreme environments, when you take it out of that environment, it can't survive in normal environment. Well, these particular worms can survive in a normal environment and in that arsenic lake. Now, nematodes are a common type of worm. They're very, very, I don't want to say they're microscopic, but they're very small creatures. Neurologists like to study them because they only have 300 or so neurons, which are equivalent of brain cells. And so they have only 300 brain cells, but they're able to do complex functions. So it's the most minimum amount of nervous and brain functionality that you could get and still have it do things.
And we have what, twice that many? I'm sorry.
Speak for yourself, Bobby.
Okay, go ahead.
So again, that's one of the things that's a toxic environment. Nematodes also, the way they lay eggs. Well, these particular nematodes that are in this environment, they give birth to live young. And they keep their eggs inside of themselves until they give birth, just like a kangaroo.
Marsupials.
Marsupials. So it's a worm that gives birth to live young. So that's another unusual bit. Here's the part where they put this in the title of the article, and yet they never discuss it in any of the articles I've read. This species of worm also has 3 different sexes. And the articles, none of the articles I read on this discuss why or how that is. They only have it in the title of the articles and never mention it in any of the articles
Ever
I've
again.
read.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of those kind of lead in, and I'm sure that's the case. But the other things about this worm that made it interesting and that they're talking about, but they put it in the title. Did they even mention once what those 3 sexes are or how they interact? No, they didn't.
I didn't know there was a third sex.
Well, they found 3 sexes for this particular worm.
What is the third sex?
I wish I knew. That's where the articles... Again, I've read several articles about this worm, and none of them talk about that. They all have that in their title. None of them talk about it.
They all have it in their title. Well,
all of them have it in the title.
It's not a misprint, is it?
No, it's not a misprint.
Okay.
So the second thing, it's not really a story, but in about 2 days... if there are no more measles outbreaks within the next 2 days, United States will again be measles free. And this has been a tough road because this past year has been the biggest or the largest measles outbreaks the U.S. has seen since after we started giving the measles immunizations. A lot of that has to do with smaller religious communities. Many of these smaller religious communities don't get immunizations. And because they're isolated, if one person gets infected, they pass the measles on very rapidly throughout that community.
But don't they build up an immunity then to it as well? If it's
And
safe,
measles is really dangerous.
okay. So
Okay. The measles, let me explain how dangerous measles is. The Congo, which is right now getting over an Ebola outbreak, has had more deaths from measles in the past year than Ebola. Okay. The reason measles is so dangerous, if you get infected with measles, you have a much lower chance of dying, but you have a much, much greater chance of being infected by measles than Ebola. Ebola is much more dangerous, but it's very hard to get infected by Ebola. Measles is so infectious that if somebody with measles enters a room, you can consider that room to be a contaminated site for about 2 hours after they leave.
So, I mean, they can just sneeze and you can
They're
sneeze
walking
or
in
cough.
and breathing
Can
will infect that room for about 2 hours.
wow.
So that's how infectious measles is. Measles also has a very nasty side effect that, again, on its own, it's not very dangerous. It is deadly. It will kill. It'll leave scarring. There's other side effects of measles, but one of the main effects of measles is it wrecks your immune system. So you may not die from measles, but it makes you much, much weaker to something else. Something that you may have had an immunity to before measles. If you get measles, you lose that immunity. So you become much more susceptible to other illnesses after you have measles.
So instead of being a stronger immune system, it's a weaker immune
Yes,
system.
yeah.
Okay.
Measles wrecks your immune system. So you'll survive measles. You'll get an immunity to measles after you survive it. But your immune system is wrecked for other illnesses.
Do you have to, does it take a certain amount of time for it to build back up?
Yeah, about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So you will build back up again, but that during that time period, after you've got measles, your body's weakened and you're susceptible. So measles is a very dangerous disease. And again, because it spreads so fast, an individual doesn't have that great a chance of dying. But when you infect everybody, there are going to be a lot of people that have, there's going to be a lot of people that can die.
Okay. And so this week,
what'll happen is we've had one of the biggest outbreaks this nation has had since immunization started. That has come to an end about 3 weeks ago. New York City has reported that the measles outbreak that was happening in New York City has ended. And the National Health Department says if we don't have any more measles outbreaks reported or any more measles infections reported in the next 2 days, then we can consider U.S. again clear of measles. But again, what happens is somebody comes into this country from overseas or somebody goes overseas and they're not immunized. It can take about 2-3 weeks that you're infectious that you don't show any symptoms.
Okay.
So that's one of the other problems is because somebody will come into the United States, infect a whole lot of people, and then they will show symptoms. So just remember to get your immunizations. If you're dealing with kids, make sure your
kids are inoculated.
that you're inoculated too.
Okay.
If you're getting because if you don't get sick, then you can't pass it on.
Okay.
All right.
So that and other stories that we've heard today and in the past can be found where, Alex?
Well, I've got the YouTube channel. So if you go on YouTube, you can listen to the YouTube, the old Science Corner stories. And I also have pictures on many of them, too, and links.
Good. Okay.
All right.
And then you've got a Facebook page, and Saturday Morning Club has a Facebook page, so everybody can check everything out. And you want to make a comment, leave Alex a comment on his Facebook page, which is?
Alex's Science Corner.
Just simple.
Alex Science Corner, yeah.
That's it. All righty. And if they want to call and complain, where can we can call 203
837
99
24.